Welcome to the Manitoba Stronger Together Zoom call tonight. This is going to be an incredibly intense night. A whole bunch of things happened, and tonight we're going to focus on what the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region did last Thursday night. So when Manitoba Stronger was having their incredible night at the beautiful Mateo Center in Selkirk on Thursday night, the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region decided that they were going to have their super duper consultation with the public, and we're going to spend the whole evening tonight on that. But before we get into that, I just want to say to everybody, Thursday night was fantastic. We had, if you recall, we had 10 candidates had come to us and said that they were going to present or take advantage of the 10 minutes presentation that we offered everybody at the Mateo Center. And in the end, 3 candidates showed up. Chris Dubeski showed up, did a wonderful speech, really good speech. He actually had people on their feet, and they weren't like running out, they were clapping. And Rosalie gave a wonderful speech. It was very, very good. And Mike Wojciechowski showed up, and he gave a speech. And it was the speeches were great. And then we got into the documentary with Helen Gruss. There was about 100 people plus or minus there, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. Overall, we sold about 65 tickets online. And then the receipts, the cash receipts we had in my hand at the end of the night was $660. Some of that was donation, some of it was seats. So that's kind of where I came up with the 100 plus or minus seats from. So the Mateo Center wasn't full. It's got a capacity of about 135. And we were probably a little less than 100, but it was a good night. And everybody had a great time, I think. Does anybody want to add to that? Yes? No? In between? No? Good. All right. It was a great night. There's going to be a lot of screen sharing tonight. Before in the pre-game show or the tailgate party ahead of this meeting, I showed folks the number of different screens I have queued up to do the presentation tonight. So what you're looking at right now is the blog post, and again, we're going to spend the evening talking about the last Thursday's WRM presentation. It was supposed to be a public consultation and review. And so what I've done here is when you go past this lovely picture of my beautiful continents here, you'll see that there's this WMR session transcripts and recording. So what I did today was, it's kind of bizarre what the entirely very transparent WMR did. So what they did was, and I'm going to show it to you, they posted on their website that they were going to do this presentation, and I'm going to show you their original post and what they said it was going to be. And on their website, they said you could click this link and you could watch it on YouTube. And so I got up this morning knowing that we were going to do this presentation today, and I looked on their YouTube, and of course there was, I'm just going to see if I can find it. There was, here it is. Where is it? Here it is. You can see all the screens we're going to go through. So this is the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region YouTube page. It's live. What you're looking at is a live page. And if you look where my cursor is right now, here's the public open house. And you can see when I wrote this morning, it had 89 views. It's got 95 views, and it's 4 days ago. And you'll see it's 17 minutes long. Sorry, there it is, in the lower right-hand corner of that icon, 17 minutes long. So this morning I got up and I started doing an analysis of it. And essentially what I saw in that 17-minute presentation, you'll see they've got nothing else on their YouTube page that's related to this. So I got up. First thing I did was I opened this thing up, and it turns out it was a pre-recorded message from the chairman of the new chairman of the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region. He's a fellow by the name of Myron Dick. He is the mayor of Niverville as well, by the way. And there was a pre-recorded message from him. We're going to get into that. We're going to go through the transcript, and I'm going to show you what he said. You're going to be able to read it. You're going to be able to listen to it. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to go back right now to the page here, our blog post here. So bear with me on this. I would say I'm not going to be as polished as I normally am, but I'm never terribly polished. So what you've got here in front of you now is, if you push this button, you will download the transcript of that 17-minute presentation, pre-recorded presentation that WMR has on their website. And this was it's not a completely verified transcript. I did it electronically. The next red button is the full transcript, because when I was busy working on this thing and analyzing it and figuring out, at first I was a little disappointed that all it was a pre-recorded message from Mayor Dick. But I started to do my analysis, and I got pretty much through that. And then I got an email from one of our members who said to me, Ken, they didn't post the actual session. And I said, I'm looking at it on the screen. And they said to me, no, it was a 2-hour presentation. It was very strange, and we're going to get into that. And so another member actually recorded it, and they were not able to record the video, so it's only audio, and it's on YouTube. So these next two buttons, these were the transcripts here. These next two buttons, this black button is to watch the video that WMR actually posted, the 17-minute video. And if you click on this one, you will watch the recording on YouTube of the entire 2-hour event. Okay, so that's what those buttons are. So you can go back, you can look at this later on and watch it yourself, and so on and so forth. So that's what that little piece is about. So now I'm going to skip the opening and whatnot on this, and I am going to go back to my other screen here. Sorry, everybody. So the way this thing was advertised is this. This is a screenshot from the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region's website. This was announcing the open house on Thursday. And I'm going to read it. It's that important, so that you see what they were billing this thing to be, and then you're going to see what it was. So I'm just going to change my glasses here. And so what this is, again, from the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region's website. Residents, businesses, and community stakeholders across the Capital Planning Region are invited to participate in a virtual open house Thursday, June 25th. The event provides an opportunity for the public to learn about the plan. I'm going to read that again. The event provides an opportunity for the public to learn about the plan and share feedback that will help shape the region's long-term growth. A regional plan outlines how land use, infrastructure, servicing, and economic development can coordinate across Manitoba Capital Region. Input gathering during the virtual open house will refine the plan before it is finalized. The full draft regional plan will release before it's considered for adoption by the province later this year. Good regional planning is about making sure we're ready for growth and the economic opportunities that come with it, says Myron Dick, chair of the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region, and Ken Drysdale's insertion and mayor of Niverville. Public input is essential to that work. Hearing from people across the region helps us build a plan that supports jobs, investments, and communities of all sizes. We encourage everybody to take part. Participants in the virtual open house will be able to review key elements of a draft regional plan, learn more about the regional planning process, provide feedback on regional priorities, and ask questions about the planning process. This public consultation is a required step in the development and adoption of the regional plan, in accordance with legislative requirements established by the province of Manitoba. Feedback gathered during this phase will help ensure that the plan reflects both regional objectives and local perspectives. And then it tells you how to participate. You had to click on this thing. You had to pre-register. They sent you a link, and on the link there were instructions. You weren't supposed to share this with anybody, which is really interesting because it's supposed to be an open public forum, and why couldn't you share the links? But be that as it may. So that's what they said this thing was going to be, right? Review key elements of a draft regional plan, learn more about the regional planning process, provide feedback, and ask questions. So I'm just going to change screens now. And I also want to remind you guys of a couple of other little things here. What you're looking at right now is a videotape that I made of the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region's board meeting, January 25th, 2026. And they're talking about public consultation. So it's only a minute, it's 26 seconds long.
My main concern with the first one is having a fake consultation because we don't have a plan to bring out. That's going to be viewed as, well, this is bullshit.
No, the February one?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
an
that's
information session.
Yeah,
It doesn't
but
matter.
it's going to be viewed the same way
We've been
until we
accused
actually
of,
have a draft plan to present, and we shouldn't have a draft plan to present until we know what the province wants. My main concern with the first one is
So you heard them saying it. That's one of the mayors. I don't know which one, unfortunately. Can't tell you that. You heard one of the mayors. They were talking about they were supposed to do this presentation in February, and he was worried about it being, in his own words, a bullshit consultation that people weren't going to believe. Now, this might not sound, I'm going to play you another 14-second video, and it might not sound like it's at first that it's appropriate or necessary, but we'll get to it when we get into the presentation. What you're looking at right now is, again, the board meeting from January 25th, 2026. The lady in the upper left-hand corner is the previous executive director of the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region. She's talking about public engagement. And what she's talking about is a poll that they did, a survey they put out, and they got 1,100 responses to it. There's 800,000 people in the region, and she's talking about what an incredible job they did in getting public engagement. 1,100, and I will bet you a third of those came from Manitoba Stronger members. So I'm going to play that for you just so that, again, to put certain things in perspective.
I'm going to go over this, but our public survey has 1,100 responses.
wow.
So, so we are definitely, as Mike would say, working to get it right? Because I will absolutely say, with all of the stakeholders we're going out to meet with, the councils, there's still overwhelming response that a coordinated approach and a regional plan is required. I'm going to go over this, but our public survey.
So you guys heard it. You know, people sometimes criticize me because I don't show you guys the receipts. I'm showing you the receipts. So the administrator or the executive director of WMR, with a population of 800,000 people, had 1,100 responses that she thinks is really a great number. And you heard the other mayors going, what? This is insane. Now, on this meeting that they had Thursday, this public open house, it was really bizarre the way they did this. I've never seen anything done like this before, and I'm just going to spotlight myself here because I am there. I've never seen a meeting held like this before. It was on Zoom, and they essentially started off, and there was a moderator, and that person, sorry, there was actually 4 simultaneous meetings going on, 4 meeting rooms in the same chat. Like they were separate. So I don't know how they chose what meeting room you went into, but there was 4 of them. In the meeting room that I've got the video from, there were 12 people in that meeting session, and a couple of them, 2, 3, 4 of them were people from the WMR. Now, another member of ours who gave a speech in their room. I think, Vicky, you told me there was 8 people in your, 5 people in that room. And so that's 2 more rooms. So let's just pretend that Vicky's room wasn't so good, but every other one was 12. So if there was 12 times 4, there was 48 people out of 800,000 people. So they had, and I've never seen this before, guys. I've done meetings all over the world. I've worked all over the world. I've never seen this before. So somehow you logged into this and you got put into one of these 4 rooms. Each room had a different moderator in it. In the room that I watched the video of, the moderator was a young lady from Edmonton. So they hired a consultant from Edmonton to moderate these 4 rooms. And in the room that I was in, or that I watched, this moderator knew nothing. And you're going to see this. They said right at the beginning, and you're going to see it, and I'm going to show you the transcript where this moderator says, well, I really don't know anything, but I'm just here to listen to your, and then we'll get into what exactly they did, okay? So again, never saw anything like this before. They had 48, 50 people in there. They haven't published any of it yet. They only published the pre-recorded thing with Mayor Dick. They didn't publish any of the rest of this stuff on their website. So this is their transparency. And before I forget, I just want to also mention to you that the last 3 or 4 board meetings that they've had, they're either 100% in camera, which means they're private, you can't watch them, or 5 or 10 minutes is in the public, and then they go in camera and discuss stuff that we haven't been able to watch. So this is the transparency that they're delivering to us. Now, with that, I want to, okay, so I'm going to show you right now. And again, you can download this yourself and you can read it. So what I was saying earlier was when I started this process, I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Sorry. When I started this process this morning, oh, don't worry, Vicky, I'm going to blow it up. Give me a second. My screen. There we go. So what I did was this morning, as I said a little bit earlier, I went in and anyway, you don't need to read this. You can just, I'm just demonstrating. You can push a button on that blog post and you can download this for your own self. It's a PDF. I think, yeah, it's a, no, I'm actually showing you pages, but what you download is a PDF. So what this is a transcript of that first pre-recorded presentation that Mayor Dick made. So he talks a little bit in this, and again, it's what did I say, 17 minutes long. He talks about a couple of different things, and then there's the new executive director of WMR makes a few comments as well. And we, like I said, you can download that. You don't need to worry about not being able to read it on your screen. So when I had done that, and I analyzed this for accuracy, and we're going to get into that, it was later on that I found out that that wasn't the whole session, that they had actually had a full session. And here is the transcript for the full session. And you can see it was 2 hours of stuff. And of course, this transcript only reflects what was said and done in the breakout room or whatever you want to call it that this person was in and they had recorded, because they were each kind of different, right? So again, don't worry about having to read that. You can download it. Again, it's on the blog post. You push the button, you'll get the PDF on it. So I'm going to start now with doing an overview commentary on what I saw and what I think it means. And I'm going to blow this up so that you can read it a little bit better on the screen, maybe a little bigger than that. Now it's complicated, so I'm probably going to be doing some reading. Okay. So this is just an overview commentary. After nearly 2 years, this is all they have. The most troubling thing about this WMR Capital Planning Region presentation is not simply what was said, it was what was not said. This was presented as an update. Remember, I showed you their announcement. This was presented as an update on a new regional plan, yet the public was not actually given a plan to review. What residents received was a short, generic list of broad priorities: economic growth, transportation, water, housing, services, resilience, coordination, flexibility, and local decision-making. Does that all sound familiar, those words? You could have plucked those out of the original Plan 2050. Resilience, water, economic growth, all this kind of stuff. You can pull it right out of the Plan 2050. Those words may sound reasonable, but they do not tell the public what the board actually intends to do, how it intends to do it, what policies will be binding, what has changed from the original Plan 2050, what has been removed, and what has been reworded. And we're going to get to it when we analyze Mayor Dick's little speech word for word, and what municipalities will be required to comply with once the regional planning bylaw is adopted. This is especially unacceptable when we consider the timeline. Premier Wab Kinew first presented the so-called Freedom Bowl concept in the public in 2024, promising that municipalities would have the freedom to leave the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region and that the original Plan 2050 process would be reset. Whether one counts from the public announcement in August, or the government's further announcement in November, or the formal introduction of the legislation later on, the public has now been waiting 19 to 22 months for clarity. And after all that time, at the end of June 2026, this is what the WMR has to show for what they've done. A 17-minute video, pre-recorded video with a list of generic goals. That is not a plan. That is not transparency. That is not meaningful public engagement. The presentation gives no serious detail about implementation. It does not provide draft policy wording. It does not provide maps. It does not explain what has changed from Plan 2050. It does not identify what obligations will be binding on municipalities. It does not explain how local development plans, zoning bylaws, subdivision approvals, water and wastewater planning, transportation planning, and infrastructure priorities will be affected. It does not show residents what powers remain local and what decisions will be constrained by the regional plan. In fact, almost every statement in this presentation could have been made in support of the original Plan 2050. That is a serious problem. Plan 2050 was a political and public relations disaster precisely because residents did not trust the process, did not believe they were being properly informed, and did not accept the vague assurances about coordination and regional planning. Yet this new presentation appears to repeat many of the same mistakes: the soft language, the broad promises, and very little substance, and no clear explanation of the legal consequences. The board says the new plan is more flexible, but flexible for whom? Flexible in what way? Flexible under the legal wording? If binding language has been changed from shall to where reasonable, or giving priority to, residents deserve to see the exact wording. They deserve a plain language comparison between the old Plan 2050 and the new plan. People deserve to know whether the substance has actually changed or whether the controversial parts have simply been repackaged. This is not a small matter. More than 800,000 residents may be affected by this regional planning structure, yet the WMR chose to release this presentation on a YouTube channel. And when I wrote this, there was only 123 subscribers on that YouTube channel. You heard it right, guys. The Winnipeg Metropolitan Region YouTube channel has 123 subscribers as of this morning. And when I had reviewed this pre-recorded little piece on their YouTube, it had only had 84 views. That was this morning. The presentation happened last Thursday. 84 reviews for a regional planning process that could affect 800,000 people. This is not public engagement. This is not public education. That is not even close to an adequate effort to inform the people whose municipalities, property rights, development approvals, infrastructure, planning, servicing, transportation, housing policy, and local autonomy will be affected. This weak outreach is not new. At a previous board meeting, the executive director discussed a survey that only received, I put 1,200, I went by memory, it was only 1,100. 1,100 responses out of 800,000 people. This is tiny, tiny level of participation. It's not even a half of 1%. Even if every one of those responses was thoughtful and sincere, it cannot reasonably be treated as a broad public consent. It represents only a fraction of 1%. Now, I want to point out to you, and I think this is extremely important. I'm not reading right now. I want to point out to you that you heard the executive director tell the board on that little video I played for you that they had great response from all of the stakeholders. And then she named developers and she named engineering firms and whatever else she named. But it's the public that is the concerned person. It's the public who are being affected by it. Developers will make money. Maybe they had a lot of responses from developers and engineering companies and those kinds of people. But the fact of the matter is they got less than 0.5% of the people to respond. They're the ones who own this land. They're the ones who own the communities, not the WMR. Sorry. The presentation also says there will be a public hearing later in the process, but that raises more questions than it answers. When will the actual readable plan be made available to the public? And by the way, after I wrote this and I was reviewing the real presentation that one of our members recorded, they said that sometime in the fall, they'll present the draft plan. So they don't have the draft plan. They're talking about presenting it in the fall. And why is that important? Because there's an election on October 28th. Why is that important? Because Wab Kinew's freedom bill that allows municipalities to get the hell out of this thing kind of turns into a pumpkin at midnight on the election, doesn't it? If your community gets out before the election, they only have to write a letter to the minister, and the minister must change the regulation and must release them. After the election, there's a whole lot more stuff going on. They have to do a public presentation. They've got to have all kinds of different hearings, and then they have to submit a letter to the minister, and then the minister is not obligated to release them. He may make a regulation. So the game changes after the election. And here we've got them telling us in this meeting that they're going to present the draft of this thing in the fall, when the election. So how in the heck will the public be able to review this thing? How in the heck will the councils be able to decide whether they want to stay in or not when it's going to come out a day, a month, a week before the election, or perhaps even after the election? Keep in mind, you saw it yourself in one of those short videos I showed you when they were talking about transparency and they were talking about consultation. This public hearing that we just did was supposed to happen in February. And it's now at the end of June. It happens June 25th. So the board should explain, Antonio, will the public be given, when will the actual readable plan be made available to the public? How long will residents have to review it, particularly considering the election and what happens after the election? Will there be a red line comparison to the Plan 2050? Will the public be given maps, implementation policies, municipal impact summaries, cost implications, the legal explanations, or will residents be expected to sorry, that distracted me here. Or will residents be expected to respond to a complicated regional bylaw on short notice after months of vague presentations? The board should also explain how it intends to ensure that the public hearing is actually accessible and properly attended. Will it be scheduled at a reasonable time? You remember in Niverville, they scheduled it on a weekday when people are at work in the afternoon. Will there be more than one hearing? We already know the answer to that. The NDP government changed the regulations quietly, didn't announce it. They changed the regulation. There used to be the requirement for 2 public hearings, which they had last time, one at Polo Park and one in Niverville. Now they've changed it to 1. Will rural residents, seniors, working families, business owners, farmers, and property owners have a fair opportunity to attend? Will the hearing be large enough to accommodate public interest? Or will they repeat the same failure seen in Niverville in 2024? The timing makes this even more serious. The municipal election is on October 28th. Municipalities that remain in the WMR Capital Planning Region past that date may be committing themselves to a much more difficult withdrawal process. And they won't, it's not may, they will. Potentially leaving future councils and residents tied to this regional structure for years before another practical opportunity to exit presents itself. And I am told that Minister Simard told folks at one of the meetings, these councils at one of the meetings, that if they don't get out before the election, they will be in for a minimum of 8 years. So these councils are, sorry, I got to correct myself. I don't think many of the councils know what the hell is going on here, because the mayors have been sworn, the mayors are the ones on the board of directors of the WMR, and they've been sworn to secrecy. They're not supposed to talk to their councils. So many of your councils, if not all of them, are in the dark on this too. They don't know what the hell it is. And we're going to get to that because something really interesting happened at the at this presentation. We're going to get into that. Just remind me about that if I forget. So this is why this presentation is so inadequate. Residents need clear, detailed, accurate information before the election, not after. Councils and candidates need to be able to tell voters exactly what remaining in the WMR means. What will the plan require? What will it cost? What authority will municipalities retain? What authority will be constrained? What happens if a local council disagrees with the regional plan? What happens if residents reject it? A generic 17-minute pre-recorded presentation barely viewed by the public does not come close to meeting that standard. Transparency requires more than saying engagement and coordination over and over again. Transparency means releasing the damn plan, explaining the binding legal consequences, identifying the specific changes from the previous plan, showing the public what municipalities will and will not be able to do locally, and give residents enough time to study the question, challenge, and respond. If they were going to do that, it should have happened in February. Not in July or in October facing an election. This presentation put on by the WMR does not do any of that. It reassures more than it informs. It pacifies more than it explains. It uses generic rhetoric where detailed public disclosure is required. After the disaster of the original Plan 2050, this is entirely unacceptable. The public has waited nearly 2 years for clarity. Instead, the WMR has produced a sparse, generic, low viewership presentation that answers none of the questions. What have they been doing all this time? And how can they possibly expect citizens to trust them through 2026 election and beyond? So that's my that's my opening. And so the next thing that I want to talk about tonight is the pre-recorded statement by Mayor Myron Dick, or the chairman of the WMR. Now, I'm going to, at the end of all of this stuff, I'm going to play you these pieces, and I'm going to play you the pre-recorded one first, and then we'll start playing the whole presentation. And again, it's going to go over time, but I'll do that right at the end. If you want to stick around and listen to it, great. If you don't, that's great too. Remember, I gave you the links. You can watch it whenever you want. Okay, here we go. Now, I want to give you a little heads up on what I'm going to say next. I'm going to be fairly harsh here. And it's not because I have any bones to pick with Mayor or Chairman Myron Dick, Mayor of Niverville. I've got no bones to pick with him. I don't know the man. He did phone me, a full disclosure. He phoned me, I don't know what it was, a month ago. And he wanted to talk about this whole thing. We had a great conversation. And I was trying to explain to him the whole city of Winnipeg veto and all this kind of stuff, which he didn't understand. And you're going to see how he didn't understand it based on his comments here. There's no other way than for me to just give you guys the facts and show you the quotes of what he said and show you how he is wrong. Mayor Dick, who is the chairman of the WMR, does not understand how the Winnipeg veto works. Secondly, he doesn't even understand how those things were changed. And I can say that, it is my opinion, but I will show you what he actually said in quotations, and then I will explain to you what the legislation and the regulations actually say. So I'm going to go back to reading my statement here, just so that I don't forget anything. During this pre-recorded introduction, Mayor Myron Dick said that Winnipeg must be included. This is talking about the veto. So he started talking about the veto power of Winnipeg. Mayor Dick said that Winnipeg must be included in the budget that's done annually and in the final approval of the plan to the minister, and that all other votes will just be a simple majority of the board. The key problem with this statement is his presentation frames Winnipeg power as narrow voting issue and then repeatedly reassures residents that municipalities keep their local decision-making authority. The legal reality is much more complicated. Winnipeg's practical veto applies to the regional planning bylaw and the annual budget. And once the regional planning bylaw is adopted, it becomes legally binding and constrains local development plans, secondary plans, zoning bylaws, subdivisions, surfacing plans, and other approvals. So let's get into this in more detail. This is from the transcript. This is Mayor Dick speaking. The city of Winnipeg must be included in the budget that's done annually and in the final approval of this plan to the minister. All other votes will just be a simple majority of the board. Now, for those of you who haven't been following along with us on this, there is a clause in the regulations that outline how the board of directors of the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region can make decisions. Originally, it said that keep in mind, the board of directors is made up out of the mayors of all of the communities, the municipalities that are in the WMR. So they get to vote on stuff. And the original voting said that it would be everybody gets one vote. And it said that a plain majority would rule, except that a majority was not legitimate, or it wasn't effective unless those people who voted represented over 50% of the people in the region. Now, the way it turns into a city of Winnipeg veto is the city of Winnipeg, of course, has 90 some odd percent or 80% of all of the people in the region. So they can't get a majority without the city of Winnipeg. Now, this whole thing was changed by regulation, and that's important. The province changed the regulation, and they then put in what I'm going to read next. And instead of the majority having to represent 50% of the population, it had to represent at least 66.6% or 2/3 of the population. Now, that really doesn't make any difference. And I'd really like to know why they changed that. But we're going to go through what that regulation actually did. So the mayor's statement about the city of Winnipeg must be included in the budget, and it's done annually and in the final approval of the plan to the minister. That's what he said. This statement is partly accurate because the capital planning region regulation says ordinary decisions are by majority vote of the directors present, but special decisions on a regional planning bylaw or the annual budget require both 2/3 of the directors present and directors representing at least 66% of the population. So Mayor Dick said that the city of Winnipeg veto only applied to the final approval of this plan. That's not what the regulation says. It says that the city of Winnipeg, that 66% vote was for special decisions on a regional planning bylaw. So if they want to change something, then when they want to enact it to begin with, all of those things, city of Winnipeg has veto over. Now, this is important. Mayor Dick's wording, final approval of this plan to the minister, is too narrow. The regulation does not say Winnipeg's population weighted approval is required only for one final submission moment. It doesn't say that. It says a decision of the board on a regional planning bylaw or the annual budget must meet the special decision threshold. This is much broader than final approval of it. So this accurate public explanation should have been, this is what he should have said, for ordinary board business, a simple majority applies. But for the regional planning bylaw and the annual budget, the board needs both a 2/3 director vote and support from directors representing 66.6% of the region's population. Given Winnipeg's population, that gives Winnipeg practical veto power over the regional planning bylaw and the annual budget. Now, so the chairman either doesn't understand that. I don't know what it would be either. I talked to him about this. Remember I said we had a conversation. It was a lovely telephone conversation, by the way. And I offered to meet with them and go through it with them, and I never heard back from them. That was about 3 weeks, month ago, I don't know. So then the next thing that the chairman, Myron Dick, doesn't seem to understand, and if he doesn't understand where these changes come from, you gotta ask yourself, does he understand what the hell the draft plan says? So he attributes the voting change, this thing we've talked about where it went from 50% to 66%, that kind of stuff. He essentially says that this was done under Bill 33. That is wrong. Mayor Dick says, quote, Bill 33 had some changes, and then he immediately discusses the voting change. That appears to be inaccurate or at least confused. The voting rule is in the Capital Planning Region regulation, specifically section 10.1, and the regulation itself marks that provision as amended 1226. Bill 33 did make regional planning related changes, but Bill 33 text deals with things such as pending applications, repeal of the regional board compliance enforcement section, municipal board process changes, expropriation, etc. Not the 66.6% voting threshold. That was changed by matter of regulation, not by a bill. That matters because this was supposed to be an explanatory presentation. If their chair cannot clearly distinguish between Bill 33, Bill 4, and the CPR regulation amendments, residents are not being given a reliable map of the law. The repeated local decision-making reassurance is materially incomplete. The executive director in this pre-recorded meeting says that the regional plan does not replace local plans and that municipalities keep local decision-making authority. The transcript includes statements such as, quote, each member municipality maintains its own local decision-making authority. Next one, quote, each municipality continues to make its own local decisions. Next one, quote, it doesn't replace local plans or decision-making, quote. And the last one, municipalities can plan in a more coordinated way, but still make important decisions locally. Those statements are technically defensible only in an extremely limited sense. Yes, municipalities still pass their own development plans, zoning bylaws, and secondary plans and approvals, but they must do so inside the legal boundaries created by the regional planning bylaw. So they just can't make their own bylaws now, their own secondary plans, those local plans must be created inside the framework of the regional plan that the city of Winnipeg has veto power over. So to say that they still maintain their local authority is ridiculous when they're being constrained by the regional plan, which is dictated by the city of Winnipeg on the basis of their veto power. The Planning Act says that once adopted, the regional planning bylaw is binding on all persons and is not subject to appeal. It further requires regional member municipalities to ensure their development plan and bylaw, secondary plan bylaw, zoning bylaw, and for capital planning region members, drinking water and wastewater management plan are not inconsistent with the regional planning bylaw. So the city of Winnipeg dictates the regional planning bylaw via their veto, and these municipalities are constrained to act within that bylaw. So where the hell is their local planning? Even more directly, a regional member municipality must not give third reading to a development plan, a secondary plan, or a zoning bylaw that is inconsistent with the regional plan, and must not approve or conditionally approve a subdivision or other development that is not consistent with the regional plan. So the presentation should not have simply said municipalities continue to make local decisions. It should have said municipalities will continue making local planning decisions, but those decisions must not be inconsistent with the regional plan bylaw once it is adopted. Local authority remains, but it becomes legally constrained within the regional plan. Without that sentence, the presentation understates the legal effect of the new plan. It doesn't replace local plans is a half-truth. The executive director says the regional plan doesn't replace local plans. Strictly speaking, that is true. Local development plans and zoning bylaws are not automatically deleted. But the statement is incomplete because the Planning Act requires local planning instruments to be brought into consistency with the regional planning bylaw. In other words, the municipalities have to review all of their bylaws, all of their plans, and they have to make sure that they conform to the regional plan. Regional member municipalities must review their bylaws within 3 years after the regional plan bylaw comes into force. So a more honest statement would have been, the regional plan does not physically replace local plans, but it sits above them. Local plans, zoning bylaws, secondary plans, and certain servicing plans must be made consistent with the regional plan. This is huge. And then this other statement they all made, federal funding. Mayor Dick says the plan will enable the board to solicit funding from the federal government. This may be politically or practically true in the sense that regional plans can support grant applications, but the presentation does not identify which federal program, how much money, what conditions attached to the money, whether municipalities must align policies to qualify, whether the funding requires density, climate, transportation, housing, servicing, or land use commitments, who applies for the money, who controls it, who pays matching funds, who carries operating or maintenance costs afterwards. This is a serious omission. We need this to get federal money. Is not enough. Residents should be told what money, from whom, and for what purpose, under what strings, and at what municipal cost. You know, you see this in government proclamations all the time. Well, you know, we're going to do this thing and it's going to bring in all kinds of business. What business? Have you ever seen it brought in business? I've never seen it. I always hear these things. Well, we're going to be able to get federal money. What money? So they just make this stuff up. And maybe they're hopeful. Maybe they're being honest in their own minds. Maybe they're being, optimistic. But it's not good enough. The presentation avoids hard governance questions. The presentation repeatedly uses soft, comfortable words. Coordination, flexibility, shared priorities, where it makes sense, support, alignment, and collaboration. The problem is that regional planning is not merely a voluntary conversation. It is a statutory bylaw process. The Planning Act says a planning region adopts its regional plan bylaw. The minister must approve it, and once adopted, it's binding and you can't appeal it. This presentation should have answered the following governance questions directly. Who decides whether a local plan is consistent with the regional plan? What happens if a municipality disagrees? Can a municipality approve a development that fits local wishes but conflicts with the regional plan? Can a future council escape the plan? What is the process to amend it? What happens to municipalities who have withdrawn? What happens if the remaining municipality wants out later? What does Winnipeg's 66% population weighted role mean in practice? This presentation avoids those questions. The membership issue is especially important. The presentation says the region is made up of member municipalities, including Winnipeg, surrounding rural municipalities. That is true in general terms, but the public need a precise and current membership explanation. Many, and I've got a list there, but many of those have left. I think there's 7 left. The process explanation is too thin. The executive director says there will be a public hearing later and that people will be able to formally present their views before decisions are made. This is correct as far as it goes, but the CPR regulation contains a detailed sequence. At least 60 days before first reading, the board must give notice, hold one or more public consultations, consult the minister and relevant departments, consult each regional member municipality, and consult other organizations or stakeholders it appears appropriate. The board then must give first reading, hold a public hearing before or after the first reading, proceed to a second reading. No, they don't. Submit the bylaw to the minister, and cannot give third reading until ministerial approval. Just let that sit for a little bit. Tomorrow is July 1st. Even before they can have their public presentation, they have to give you 60 days notice. So if they gave you notice tomorrow, July 1st, so July, August is 60 days, so you're going to be holding these hearings September 1. That's if they announce tomorrow. So what they're really telling you here is they haven't got anything. You're not going to hear it until after the election. And so those municipalities are still in this thing praying that they're going to see something and they're going to be able to present it. They're not going to get it, because if they don't announce this thing till August, that means you're into the election already. The presentation should have shown that process as a clear timeline with dates. Instead, they gave vague next steps. The public engagement numbers are a serious credibility problem. We noted that the YouTube channel only had 123 subscribers out of 800,000 people plus, and the video had only 84 views. I could only open the YouTube page, but the accessible text did not expose the current viewer subscription account, so I am treating those numbers like this. That said, if those numbers are accurate, they are terrible for a statutory regional planning affecting land use, infrastructure, servicing, transportation, housing, water, wastewater, local municipal planning. The WMR itself described the June 25th event as a public consultation required as part of the plan development and adoption process. The event notice required registration, said the Zoom link would be emailed on the day of the event, and closed registration at noon on June 25th. A virtual meeting only, hidden behind a registration process, promoted through a low subscriber YouTube channel and a website notice is not serious public outreach for a regional government issue of this size. Final assessment. The presentation is polished, calm, and deliberately reassuring, but as a public accountability document, I said it is weak, I'm being kind, it has failed. It tells residents the plan is about coordination, growth, infrastructure, water, housing, transportation, and flexibility. It does not explain that the regional plan is binding legal bylaw, that local plans and zoning must not be inconsistent with it, that subdivisions and other development approvals can be blocked if inconsistent with it, and that Winnipeg has practical veto power over the regional planning bylaw and budget through the 66% population threshold. The most accurate critique is this. The presentation does not technically hide the existence of the Winnipeg voting issue, but it minimizes its significance. It also repeatedly reassures residents about local control without clearly explaining the statutory limits that the regional plan will place on local planning, zoning, servicing, subdivision, and development decisions. This is a core failure. The presentation sounds like public education, but it's more of a public relations exercise. We've gone through, I've shown you the transcripts that we prepared. We've gone through the comments on the pre-recorded presentation. We've gone through an analysis of an overview analysis of the whole thing. We've got like 5 minutes left. I'm just going to quickly show you this document. So this document, I'll blow it up, is a deep dive into the video, and we're going to start the video in 5 minutes. So I'll actually show you the whole length video, because the pre-recorded bit that WMR posted, if you remember, they only posted the pre-recorded 17-minute bit on their YouTube site. The rest, who knows where it is. But this document is a deep analysis of the full session, and I used the transcript that I created. My overall assessment, the full session makes the WMR process look worse, not better. The pre-recorded YouTube portion was already weak because it gave only broad themes and no real plan, but the full session shows something even more troubling. The so-called public engagement session was structured around asking residents to comment on a plan that they had not seen, using questions so broad that meaningful answers were impossible. This was not a serious public review of a regional plan. It was a managed feedback exercise built around 4 generic themes: economy, transportation, water, and healthy communities. The public was asked to react to the categories, not policies. They were asked to describe impacts without being shown the proposed rules, maps, legal wording, implementation, municipal effects, costs, or changes. This is why I call it an exercise in futility. And they admitted right at the beginning, the facilitator said that the input from this session plus the earlier survey, municipal input, remember the one that was 1,100 people out of 800,000? Provincial consultation, industry input, research, and technical expert work would be used to produce a public-facing draft of the regional plan. Then she said the public would have an opportunity to review the full draft at some point in the fall and comment at the statutory public hearing before the end of the year. The reason they say it before the end of the year is because they have to submit it to the minister, complete and approved by January 1st for the minister's review and approval. This means the session was not actually a review of the draft plan. It was a pre-draft feedback session. That is a major issue. Residents were being asked to comment before they had a document that matters. They were not reviewing the plan. They were being asked to help shape something they could not see. The facilitator was not a WMR subject matter expert. The facilitator opened by explaining she was from Y Station Communications in Edmonton and had been hired by the WMR to facilitate the session because she was from outside Manitoba and did not have a meaningful stake in the outcome. She described her job as listening. What in the hell? How was she supposed to answer questions? That may sound neutral, but it creates a serious problem. The person leading the discussion couldn't answer detailed questions. Later, when the discussion moved into policy areas, she openly stated that she did not work directly with the WMR in development to develop the substance of those policy areas and was not an expert in them and had only pretty limited nuanced information, she said. The questions were too broad to be useful. The facilitator repeatedly asked questions like, what impact will the policy area have on your community, good or bad? That sounds open and democratic, but without actual policy details, it becomes almost meaningless. I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff here, guys. For instance, when they were asking about clean communities, remember, we're supposed to be talking about a regional plan. Regional plan. Don't misunderstand me about what I'm going to say, okay? I'm not criticizing what the participants said, but how this relates to this regional plan. So they asked about healthy communities or something, and the discussion, there was only, like I said, a dozen people or so in that meeting or less. And, the discussion went around, should we be flushing tampons down the toilet? Or should we be allowing people to build big houses? We don't need big houses anymore. What in the hell has that got to do with regional planning? Those are all good things. You can talk about those, but it's not regional planning. Now, we're right at the end here, and I'm going to skip. You can see that there's a whole lot of stuff here. This is not currently available in the blog post, but I'll put it back there. But this was that thing I mentioned to you that I didn't want to forget. I'm just seeing if I got it written out or if it's just in my mind right now. I thought it was here somewhere. Okay. Just to show, here it is, item 8. So close to the end, at the very end of this session, a counselor, someone who identified themselves as a council person from the RM of Rockwood, said she was under the impression that the open house was supposed to let people learn about the proposed draft regional plan, but instead, she said, it felt like the public was simply being asked questions and not being told what the changes were. She said community members have been directed to attend to get information. And in her view, this is a council member from the RM of Rosser. In her view, the session did not provide it. This is very important. This was not just a random member of the public being confused. This was a municipal councilor saying, in effect, we sent people here to learn about the plan, and they were not told about the plan. Now we're right at time, and I will make, what I'll do for you guys, by the way, is I'll make these commentaries available for you to download. They will be embedded in the blog post. So probably tomorrow or something, I will go in, I'll add another panel in the blog post, and you'll be able to click on that and download these commentaries. They'll be in PDF format. So what I wanted to do now to close up is I'm going to start playing you the presentation. So I'm not going to play you just the 17-minute version. I'm going to play you the whole thing. And the reason I'm going to do that is because that 17-minute presentation resides in the blog post. That 17-minute presentation resides within the entire presentation. They played it as part of the presentation. So with that, by the way, if you haven't guessed already, we're not going to do our client planning this week. So I'm just going to go here. I'm going to start.
Can I just ask you a quick question, Ken? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Are you going to entertain any questions from people later on, or not necessarily?
Well, the presentation's 2 hours. I tell you what, if folks can hold off questions, we will come back to it next week. And in that time, I'll add to this. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the downloads for the transcripts and to watch the videos. I'll add to this panel, and I'll put where you can download my commentary as PDF. So folks will have an opportunity to review that over the week. And if they've got any questions, we'll do a special session, because this video is going to run 2 hours. And again, if you guys drop out or anything, that's fine. But you should at least listen to the first 20 minutes or so of it. Now, again, what you're going to watch here.
Hello there.
What you're going to watch here is, this is only an audio recording, because the MST member that recorded it said that he could not record the video. So you can hear what's being said, you can listen to everything, but you won't be able to see it. So with that, everybody, we will see you next week. Hopefully you can hang around for 20 minutes, at least 20 minutes, catch the first 20 minutes of this. That whole portion where the RM of Rosser council member is right near the end.
Thanks for joining us today. My name is Amanda, and I'm a strategist at a company called Y Station Communications and Research based in Edmonton. We've been asked to facilitate this public engagement session on behalf of the Winnipeg Metro Region, so I'll be speaking with you all today. We've been asked, I just want to start with a little bit of an explanation of the purpose of the session, my role in the day. We've been asked by WMR to run these engagement sessions precisely because we are from outside of Manitoba and don't have a meaningful stake in what the upcoming draft regional plan needs to look like and what the decisions are going to be made at the regional or local level. As a third-party facilitator, my entire job here today is to listen to your thoughts on the initial priority areas that the WMR has been working on for these draft regional plan and take you through a series of questions about them, then faithfully report what the conversations today said. So in my first duty as facilitator, I want to again thank you for sharing your time today and for sharing your experiences with us. If you're going to bear with me a little, I'm just going to go through a little bit more explanation. There'll be a short video and then we'll get into the discussion. The core of this public engagement session is about sharing in the 4 priority areas that have been identified by WMR, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that through the session. Those priority areas are the economy, transportation, water, and healthy communities. We want to get your practical public feedback on them as that is a really important part of shaping this regional plan. Your perspective is critical for the WMR team to create a regional plan that works for the people of this region. We're not expecting you to be policy experts in these areas. You might have strong expertise in one or more of these areas, and that's great, but it isn't necessary to participate today. You don't need to work in these areas or be a subject matter expert to comment meaningfully on them. What's going to be really valuable for us to hear is your perspective from your own lived experience and expertise, whatever that may be, as a member of the general public. We want to hear how you think these policy areas and actions might affect you and the impact they will have on the region. We're going to take the input from the conversations we're having today and publish a What We Heard report. The WMR will use that report to refine their thinking on the regional plan, along with the engagement survey that was done with the public earlier in the year. Input from member municipalities and their councils and elected officials, consultation with the provincial government, with industry, research done by the WMR and by other technical experts, and all of that's going to be taken together to produce a public-facing draft of the regional plan. Any regional plan has to be put together with public input, and that's the key purpose of what we're here to do today. Bringing all of the feedback from this session together with all of the other input that goes into the plan, you as the public will have an opportunity to review the full draft at some point in the fall and comment on it at a statutory public hearing that's going to be scheduled before the end of the year. I also want to talk just a little bit about how today is going to work on a technical level. First, because of technical difficulties, we could not reliably use Zoom breakout rooms for this session. That means that rather than getting a live presentation from WMR to help inform the session, we are going to have to play you a recording to provide you with background information on the regional planning process. After that, I will take you through a few slides on each of the 4 policy areas I mentioned earlier before we dive into a discussion on each of those. At the end of the session, we'll have an opportunity for open comments to make sure you have a chance to say everything that you wanted to say. To make sure that we have that open session at the end of the day, I'm going to be carefully managing our time to make sure that we move through each policy area so that folks have the opportunity to comment and that we don't miss anything that people joined to talk about. Because the format limits us from having a WMR subject matter expert in each room at the same time, we're going to collect and categorize any questions that you have in the chat, so please feel free to post in the meeting chat. And we're going to answer as many of those questions as we can in the What We Heard report that will come out in the weeks after these sessions. I do apologize for this. The technical issues and limits that they put on the session were not our first plan, but we are doing our best with the limitations of the technology as it stands at this time. I also do need to mention that we are recording this session so that we can transcribe it, so that we can be assured that we have an accurate set of notes for the resulting What We Heard report. Nothing you say in the discussion or in the chat will be attributed to you in the report. All insights and observations in that report will be completely anonymized, and the recording will be deleted after the regional planning process is complete. So we've got a good number of people on the call today, and I want to be able to hear from everyone. So the settings on this meeting require me to unmute you so that you can talk. That's partly just because Zoom can be really loud if there's cross chatter, and it's difficult to sort of tell when other people are trying to jump in when you're not in the same room together. I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak, so I'm going to be running a speakers list. The way you're going to get onto that speakers list is by using the raise hand function in Zoom. You can find that as the second option sorry, I'm just logging back to make sure that I can see where it is. You should be able to see that as the second option from the bottom when you click on the React button on the bottom center of your window. The React button looks like a heart. I'd love it if everyone could give a try right now to raise their hand, just so I can see if everyone's got it and if we need to troubleshoot anybody's raise hand function. Thank you, David, for jumping right in there. So if you raise hand, it looks like my screen right now with a little hand in the top. Is anyone having trouble with the raise hand? Just post in the chat or... Okay, so again, to get onto the speakers list today, you'll need to raise hand. You should be able to get to it from the React menu. If you're having trouble finding it or need some help, let me know. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat and we can work that out. Yeah, great question, David. There are 3 different Zoom meetings happening right now. We couldn't put everybody into one Zoom meeting because Zoom is not able to guarantee that we can reliably use breakout rooms. So that's the technical issue. So she should be online right now with a different facilitator. If she's not, you can let me know and I can let our tech support know and we can work with her directly to get that to happen. Thank you. Okay, before we begin, do you want to just touch on rules of engagement? As always, we're bringing together different people from different backgrounds, schools of thought, and levels of expertise, and we need to make sure that there's room for everyone in the conversation. We're committed to providing a welcoming environment where participants can share perspectives freely, and we just ask that everyone work with me to treat one another with dignity, even in disagreement. As a facilitator, I want to hear from you. I want to hear everyone's perspectives, but I'm not going to have any tolerance today for abusive, discriminatory, or harassing behavior. Participants who engage in that behavior will be warned, and if the behavior persists, will be removed from the session. I don't think that's going to happen today, but I say this in all of the conversations I facilitate just to make sure that we all have the same information. Okay, so we're almost going to get into the discussion. I'm going to begin by playing a short video from the WMR to provide you with background about what the regional plan is, what it's intended to accomplish, what the limits of it are, why we have regional plans at all, and some additional background information about what we're here to talk about today. If you have any observations, questions, or comments about that, please feel free to post them in the chat while we are discussing. And I'm just going to get that video rolling right now. Here we go.
Hello, and thank you for being part of this presentation. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Myron. I'm the mayor for the town of Niverville, and I am the recently elected chair of the Capital Planning Region Board. Tonight, you're going to be hearing a presentation based on a plan that is being proposed by this board to be taken to the minister, which will be our Capital Planning Region plan. So why are we doing this? We're doing this so to be able to get this plan in the hands of the provincial minister by the 1st of January, as per the legislation set out by the provincial government. What this plan will enable us to do will be to solicit funding from the federal government so as to be able to make our region, not just a region where we want to live, but one where we want to thrive. So this is about us as a board wanting to do our part to enabling our residents to have the communities they want to live in, to have the places that they wish to go. So in the past, there was a plan that had been introduced, and some may still have that as the framework for what your thought processes are, and that's understood. However, there's been significant changes from what was to what you'll be hearing today. Some of the highlights, for instance, is Bill 33 had some changes. Some of the changes that were made were the voting. So right now, the voting is that in regards to the City of Winnipeg, some are concerned about the veto power. The City of Winnipeg must be included in the budget that's done annually and in the final approval of this plan to the minister. All other votes will just be a simple majority of the board. Also removed is any comments regarding to specific numbers on density as it comes to individual communities. We wanted this to be flexible and to be open in order to live in the world that is changing all around us, quickly, that we will be able to adapt to make sure that we're not constrained or restricted. Also changed in this is we're trying to get wording that says we're giving priority to, or where things are reasonable, as opposed to things that says we will or we won't. So again, to create greater flexibility. In this plan that you'll see a presentation, there'll be a series of questions, surveys and such. I want to invite you to please respond to those questions when they are asked. We are looking for constructive information from all of you as to maybe some things we've missed, some things need to be added, maybe there's some things that need to be removed, maybe there's wording that needs to be changed. And so we welcome all of that feedback. We believe that this plan is good, but that it can be better. And by working together with you, we know that we can have a region where we all want to live and feel the freedoms that we wish to live by. So again, thank you for coming to this presentation. We welcome you to it, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's open house on a draft regional plan. We're pleased to be sharing the result of extensive work over the past year to develop a clear, focused new plan for the region. I'm the Executive Director for the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region, and before we pass you on to facilitate this discussion where we'll ask you for your input, I'm going to provide you some background information on the WMR and the regional planning process. So let's start by spending a few minutes talking about who the Capital Planning Region is. This will help give some context to the work that you'll be discussing later today. The Capital Planning Region was created by the Province of Manitoba through the Planning Act. This means it is formally established in law to support planning across the region. We operate as the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region, so you may hear both names used interchangeably. The region brings together member municipalities to work on shared priorities such as growth, infrastructure, and long-term planning. Regulations also guide how the region operates. These outline how decisions are made, as well as the rules and processes the region follows. Overall, the region's role is to support coordinated planning across communities, while each member municipality maintains its own local decision-making authority. Our mandate is set in provincial legislation. In simple terms, our role is to support economic and social development by improving how land use and infrastructure are planned and coordinated across the region. Some of the key ways we do this are by adopting a regional plan, by supporting planning for infrastructure and services, and by working with member municipalities on shared planning issues. Overall, the region's role is to support coordinated planning across municipal boundaries, while each municipality continues to make its own local decisions. The region is made up of member municipalities from across the capital region, including the City of Winnipeg and surrounding rural municipalities. These municipalities are represented on the WMR Board, which helps guide the region's work and decision-making. The board also includes provincial appointees, including representation from Treaty 1 and Manitoba Métis Federation. This structure helps ensure that different perspectives are included while municipalities continue to represent their own communities. So that gives an overview of who is part of the region and how it is structured. The next question is, what is it that this group is working towards together? The main tool we use to guide that work is a regional plan. At a high level, a regional plan is a long-term planning document that helps municipalities work together on issues that cross boundaries. These are things like growth, infrastructure, land use, areas where decisions in one municipality can affect others. Regional plans are a common planning tool used in many parts of Canada, especially in regions experiencing growth. Regional plans help provide a shared direction so municipalities can plan in a way that is more coordinated over time. It doesn't replace local plans or decision-making, but it helps align them where there are shared interests. A regional plan provides a shared roadmap for land use, infrastructure, and servicing. so municipalities can plan in a way that is more coordinated, but still make important decisions locally. And it helps connect municipal and provincial priorities, so planning efforts are more aligned across governments, and governments can improve efficiency. Each municipality has its own local plans and bylaws that guide development in their community. These local plans are important because they reflect local needs, priorities, and decisions made by each municipality. The regional plan doesn't replace those local plans. It helps make sure that where there are shared issues, planning is more aligned and coordinated across municipal boundaries. In simple terms, it helps connect local planning efforts so municipalities can work towards common goals where it makes sense. Developing a regional plan is a structured process that brings together a few key components. It includes technical work, where we look at data, growth patterns, infrastructure needs, and other factors that help inform planning decisions. It also includes a legislative process, which ensures the plan meets provincial requirements and follows the steps set out in legislation. And just as importantly, it includes engagement, working with municipalities, partners, and the public to gather input and perspectives. These components are connected and happen throughout the process, helping shape the plan over time. Engagement is an important part of the process, and it happens throughout, not just at one point in time. So I'll walk through how we approach gathering input in our first phase of engagement. Phase 1 of engagement took place between July 2025 and February 2026. This phase focused on gathering input to help inform the early stages of the regional plan. It included working with a range of participants, including the province, municipal councils, administrations, and planners, as well as community and industry stakeholders. Members of the public were asked to provide input through a survey that was shared online in late 2025. The goal of this phase was to bring together different perspectives to help identify key challenges, priorities, and opportunities across the region. And now I'll shift into a high-level overview of the regional plan, focusing on overall direction and key areas of focus. The regional plan is organized around a set of key priority areas for the region. These areas reflect themes identified through board direction and informed by what we heard through engagement. They are designed to be flexible so they can support regional coordination while still allowing municipalities to make decisions that reflect their local needs. Each area points to a key part of the region, including economic growth, how people and goods move across the region, water and watershed health, and healthy, resilient communities. Together, they provide a clear and practical structure, helping focus the areas that matter most across the region. Across all of these areas, there is a consistent focus on coordination, practical tools, and approaches that can support different types of communities across the region. These areas work together to support growth while maintaining flexibility for municipalities. I'll finish by walking through the next steps in the process, and this provides an overview of how the plan continues to move forward over the coming months. So this slide provides a high-level view of how that process continues. We are currently in our second phase of engagement, which includes opportunities like this public open house. The open house is an opportunity to learn more about the plan, provide feedback on regional priorities, and ask questions about the process. Following this phase, the plan continues to be refined based on input and direction for the WMR Board. There are also formal steps required through legislation, including a public hearing later in the process. The public hearing is a separate step where members of the public can formally present their views to the board before any decisions are made. So while we are in an important engagement phase now, there will continue to be opportunities for input as that process moves forward. Overall, each stage builds on the one that before it, helping ensure the plan reflects feedback and direction along the way. This is an ongoing process, and your input helps shape the plan to continue to evolve. So with that, I'll pass it over to our moderators to facilitate the discussion.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to jump into the policy areas, and I'm just going to share screen over to a different file so that the video comes down because it seems to be sticking on my end. Apologies for that. Great. So, based on a range of inputs, including previous public engagement, these are the areas that the WMR believes could form the foundation of a draft public regional plan. But again, what the WMR has in place is a draft. Any regional plan has to be put together with public input, and that's why we are here with you today. Your input will be shaping the final public regional plan. I'm going to give a very brief overview of the four major public policy areas one by one that Natalie touched, or that the executive director touched on in the video, and then take you through the same set of questions on each one. I'm going to take a few minutes at the front of each policy area to walk you through them, some quick notes on what the WMR heard, and then I'll talk about the draft actions and intended outcomes for the area and ask you some questions. The same questions are going to be asked in each section, but on different topics. And I will leave the actions and outcomes up while we talk. I want to just be clear that I didn't work directly with WMR to develop the substance of these policy areas, and I'm not an expert in them. I have some information, but pretty limited nuanced information. So if you have deep questions about them, please post them in the chat, and we'll do our best to make sure they're addressed in the What We Heard report. Or we will also provide an email that you can reach out to the WMR directly, and they'll do your best to answer questions. And we'll also be capturing those questions to include in the What We Heard report. So that's the email is just posted in the chat there. And that email is openhouse2026@wmregional.ca. So, first policy area we're going to look at today is a growing and innovative economy. This was a consistent priority that came through in engagement and is an important part of the overall direction of the plan. It focuses on key areas that support economic activity across the region, including land, infrastructure, and partnerships. We heard pretty consistently through the engagements that infrastructure and servicing are foundational to growth, which means we need reliable, coordinated infrastructure, which is critical to attracting investment and enabling development. We also heard that the plan needed to look at opportunities to strengthen regional alignment. Greater coordination across municipalities can support competitiveness and growth, and that there was a need for additional serviced employment land, so opportunities to increase the supply of investment-ready, fully serviced industrial and employment lands in the region. We also heard that protecting agricultural land and key resources is foundational. Growth can be balanced with safeguarding long-term economic assets like farmland and mineral resources, and that strong partnerships will support economic growth. Collaboration across municipalities, Indigenous nations, and other partners supports shared prosperity. This slide highlights a few key areas within this theme. So the draft actions and key outcomes at this point for this policy area are that we want to expand the amount of ready-to-use land for jobs and business, with the outcome being more places are available for new jobs and economic growth. The plan has a focus on preserving farm and resource lands while supporting growth. Important lands are available for long-term use, and work with Indigenous nations to support economic growth, with an outcome of stronger partnerships create shared economic opportunities. So, I want to just be clear that these areas reflect what we heard through the engagement, particularly around infrastructure, land use, and partnerships. And all of these actions are intended to support economic activity across the region while allowing flexibility for individual municipalities. Based on what we've just described, and are looking at in the actions and key outcomes, I want to get to questions. So again, if you want to participate in the conversation, please feel free to post your questions in chat or use the raise hand function in Zoom, which is in the React menu. It's the second from the bottom in the React menu, which is clicking on the little heart at the bottom of your screen, or in the tools screen of a mobile phone. First question, what do you think that the impact of this policy area, economic growth and partnerships will, as we have described it, would be for your community, good or bad? Go ahead.
Well, we don't know yet until we know more about what the partnerships are going to involve.
Okay, can you expand a little bit on what you're looking for there?
Well, the impact of what? I need to understand more about what you mean. What do you think, how this is going to impact? I mean, I guess conversation is always good between different, but what is it that what are your plans going forward? We can't know how this is going to impact anything until we know what your plans are.
Of course. So the Winnipeg Metro Region wouldn't direct specific partnerships, like there wouldn't be a list of partnerships that organizations have to pursue. What were partnerships around economic growth that support collaboration across municipalities, between municipalities and Indigenous neighbours, and other partners that make sense in individual municipalities is what they're referring to there. Does that help? Did you want to jump back in, Anna? I see David's on my speakers list as well. Okay, I'm just gonna there we go.
Hi. Yes, I guess I had two comments. One is that Canada, other than different rates of immigration, which does cause growth everywhere in Canada, but other than that, the economy was not changing very fast. In the past year and a half, there seem to be big changes. Industries that we had are not sustainable anymore. And I'm just questioning that if the plan is to expand economic opportunities, and we don't know quite how that's going to settle out with the Free Trade Pact and so on, is it premature to be setting a plan? Because it'll be nice to have this plan in effect for 50 years. Is it premature when we don't know if we're going to export steel or soybeans to the U.S.? Because that's a big part of our prairie economy. So that was my question, is the bet prematurely. The other one is related to the impact that the CPR could have on residential development. Because in the old days, as I mentioned up above here, the main need for regional planning was flood mitigation and drinking water supplies from the city or from the clean water area and sewage handling capacity. When we get into the density issues, residential density, that's something that was not part of the plan or part of the concern 15 years ago. So it's, I think the focus has changed when it includes density. And does it still include density? Those are my questions. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for those questions. As I said, I only have fairly limited information about some of the deeper thinking that's gone on to this. So I encourage you to post those questions in chat as you have, or share them with WMR. I can say, Mayor Dick did mention in his opening remarks that density is not included in this current plan. There is an opportunity to talk a little bit about how housing is positioned in the resilient communities section, which we'll get to. And one of the themes we'll be discussing tonight is water. So look forward to hear any input you've got on what that needs to look like with that context, David. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share or perspectives they'd like to add about how this will impact, how economic growth and partnerships will impact your community, or are we ready to hear the next question? Sorry, a growing and innovative economy is the actual language I should be using here. I apologize.
I do have something actually. speaking of growing economies, I don't know that immigration is the greatest for growth because we see a lot of immigration basically utilizing resources but not contributing. So, but if we're going to grow within ourselves, I think a good thing would be something I've seen out west is, you know, there's a lot of agricultural space, and, you know, having greenhouses, geothermal heating, cooling, all that kind of stuff, and having a greenhouse type economy where we're not bringing in relying on the United States or other places for food, but maybe growing our own through hydroponics or greenhouse agriculture. I think that would bring in a lot of jobs, but also it would create more of that sort of 100-mile economy, so to speak. So that's something I was thinking about. And so a lot of and not expanding the city center into a sprawl. You know, just stopping the limits and then develop upward, or develop some of the derelict places, like rundown or closed or unused spaces, old buildings that are not being used, old, you know, like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of something that's closed down and is just sitting derelict. Using the space already and then building up rather than creating a sprawl city and into agricultural and natural lands. If we can avoid that, that would be great. So those are just my 2 thoughts.
Thanks, Anna. I see someone has changed their name to raised hand to unmute me, so I'm going to send you an ask to unmute prompt, assuming that that's a request.
Hi there. Thank you for unmuting me. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. I just noticed my question is more on the technical side. I don't have access to the chat, and I don't have access to the ask a question dialog box. I'm connecting from my browser, and I'm just wondering if this Zoom call is set up to only work with like the latest version of Zoom.
So I wouldn't be in control of that. Zoom runs that issue for us. I will reach out to our tech support and see if I can get him in here to kind of talk through what the problem is, because it looks like there's at least one other person who has the same issue. Yeah, you should be able. We don't have the Q&A box enabled. It's just chat. But if you can't see chat, that's a challenge. So let me just. Yeah.
The other part was I just wanted to let you. My other comment was I just wanted to let you know at the beginning when you're asking people to raise their hand, I wasn't able to raise my hand. Like those features have been disabled from the Zoom call, and I typically use Zoom calls without issue in other meetings. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Very strange. Thank you very much for working so hard to flag that with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. If I hadn't renamed, the only reason you just saw me was because I had to rename my name to raised hand unmute me, please, and thankfully you saw that. But just so you know, there could be other people that are not able to participate because of this issue.
Okay, I'm gonna reach out to tech support, and then I'll maybe just unmute the other folks that I think might be having tech issues to see if that's a challenge that we're dealing with on more than one place. Just gonna pick someone who's been on from the beginning. Beverly, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to ask you to unmute just to check and see if we're only having this isolated tech issue or if it's affecting some other folks on the call. So you're going to get that request just now.
Our specialty with beta glucan, and what happened
was you've just unmuted me.
I have.
Yes. But I can't raise my hand or anything. I don't have anything like that or give a reaction.
Okay, are you logged in on a computer or on a phone?
I am on a desktop.
Interesting. Okay, so we're having this issue with a couple of different folks. I'm just gonna pose our next question, but I am working on this behind the scenes with our tech support. Thank you for confirming that we're having this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so still on the growing and innovative economy. The first question I asked was, what impacts do you see? The second question I'm going to ask is, what do you think needs to be emphasized or changed in a regional plan that has this theme, these actions, and key outcomes in it? So I'm going to ask people to stick up their hand who can. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm pretty sure I'm getting a little cue to who might be having trouble seeing the those texts. So I'm going to unmute all of the folks that I think can't raise their hands and try it that way. But yeah, if anybody who can raise their hand has something to contribute, please go ahead on the economy, what needs to be emphasized, what needs to be changed. Who is the main contributor? You're unmuted, so you can go ahead and jump in.
Okay, yeah. Well, my question was, who's the main contributor? So to elaborate on that, I guess, who had the most influence in this plan, and who provided the most information in developing your plan?
So I can't speak to most, least, or indifferent. What I can say is that member municipalities and elected officials, members of the public, and subject matter experts who work in provincial and municipal governments, Indigenous communities were all asked to provide input at various times. The first round of public input was collected through a survey that was launched late last year. And then this public engagement session is a really important part of informing the plan.
Can we have access to that survey and fill it in if we hadn't yet?
So the survey closed a few months ago, unfortunately, so I'm not able to do that. But if you have feedback you want to provide that's more detailed, you're welcome to email it to WMR at openhouse2026@wmregion.ca, and I will do my best to collect as much input as I can today.
Okay, and are you documenting the input that we're giving?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything that's spoken or chatted today, like posted in chat today, is being captured and will be informing the analysis of a What We Heard report that will be released later this year.
Right. So the business portion of having those greenhouses and all that. One of the other things, it would be good to have a community resource project where people learn to be self-sufficient, victory gardening and all that, because with the food crises that are coming, especially with things being interrupted, as we see, with the States and other places, it would be good to be more self-reliant that way. And I think it's something that can be taught right from childhood up into adulthood, and getting people to bring back the victory garden and more self-sufficiency that way as well.
Great. Thank you, Anna. While we've been chatting, I've just been going back and forth with tech support, and we are having trouble diagnosing the issue that folks are having around logging in through the browser. It seems like it might be an issue between the app browser and the app, which is not super helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the structure of the meeting so that participants can unmute themselves. And basically, I'll be watching to see if your microphone changes from red to gray on my end, and then I will say your display name as it appears, and that'll be your cue to speak. And hopefully we can manage it that way so that everyone has an opportunity to participate. So with that change, you don't have to raise your hand anymore. All you have to do is hit the unmute button wherever it is on your device. Does anyone else want to jump in on the first theme at this point? Growing an innovative economy.
Apartment blocks popping up everywhere that
Yes.
people in Niverville wouldn't be allowed to build.
Okay. Since I'm not seeing microphones popping right now, everyone's still should have the ability to unmute themselves now. But we're going to shift gears to our next theme for the night, which is safe, efficient, and effective transportation. So what we've heard in the inputs that received to date is that a consistent concern throughout all of the inputs we received is that aging infrastructure and safety concerns are a pretty consistent area of focus. Aging roads are beginning to affect safety and the movement of people and goods throughout the region. So we also heard that there's a need for better regional connectivity. Stronger connections are needed between communities so that folks can access jobs, services, and amenities. And we heard that people are interested in seeing opportunities to expand transportation options across the region. So growing interest in enhancing transportation options like transit, active transportation, and shared mobility. We also heard that transportation plays a critical role in supporting economic growth. Businesses and industries who were consulted identified efficient goods movement and access to labor as key economic priorities going forward. And we also heard that opportunities to strengthen regional coordination are of interest, and to explore different approaches across municipalities, can create challenges for aligning infrastructure and investment decisions, especially where they affect more than one community. So based on what we heard, the draft actions and key outcomes for this policy area are the expand transportation options across the region, with an outcome of hopefully of people having safer, more reliable ways to travel within and between communities in the region. And then the other action is improve transportation for moving goods, with a key outcome being that businesses benefit from more efficient movement of goods, stronger links to key economic areas, and improved access to regional and external markets. So on that area of safe, efficient, and effective transportation being one of the key themes for the regional plan, I'm going to start with that same question, which is, what do you expect the impact of this policy area will have as described as it is described now in your community? Good or bad? David, go ahead.
Unmute. As far as transportation, the idea of, because my son, when they first opened the hog plant outside of Brandon, he moved to Brandon and he had no way of getting to work because the plant is miles away on a gravel road, so bike didn't work. And I noticed that in a neighboring city, in Grand Forks and Fargo, they have factories, the sugar beet factories, that are miles from town. And they don't run a city bus, they run a company bus. So the company bus bumbles around in Grand Forks and picks up workers and takes them into work. So that's something that hasn't been talked about here. We hear people talking about, we need the Niverville city bus to be put in place. And if you have factories that are out of town, like the hog plant, the option is a company bus system. And the idea of city transit is not that effective in that it tends in a small center, it tends to run empty so much at the time that it's not fuel efficient. But when you're talking about alternate modes of transportation, are you considering the company bus model? And I guess the other is, a lot of the gas is used by people living in Gimli and Morris and coming to jobs in Winnipeg. And I know that's an anathema to people who want people to walk to work, but that's the reality. And so that's a comment I thought I'd make, that I hadn't seen anything in the Metro Region info on other forms of transportation, such as the company shuttles, a shuttle van or a bus.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point around and helping to provide me some context around what we heard on some of those ideas for shared mobility, just company buses, those kinds of things. I'd actually love to put that back to you, David, and tell me if you could, not to put you on the spot, but what would you like to see in the regional plan around that? Like, what do you think would be a helpful way to bring that idea forward as a regional priority?
Well, in the city, I use the bus, and when I travel, I've traveled to a dozen cities on business routinely, and I always take their transit, and Phoenix and Boston and so on. And it is feasible. It's a lot better in those cities, partly because of the density of people. You know, you have millions of people. You have a lot more full buses and public transit vehicles. Here in Winnipeg, we don't. And I've never taken the bus in Steinbach or Brandon, but I'm imagining that the degree of fullness is not impressive. You know, that they aren't filling buses every day. It's bad enough in South Winnipeg, where most of the day there are fewer than 6 people on the bus. You know, when you see the bus go by, it's almost empty. And that's why the city bus in Winnipeg, which is a decent sized city, still uses more fuel per paid rider than a person commuting in a small car. So that's the idea, the myth that buses are more efficient. Buses save you traffic congestion, and when you have 500,000 people going from here to there every morning, public transit's the only way of doing it. But if you only have 100 people, then buses are iffy. But I noticed the WMR stuff seems to be more theoretical, like aspirational, where they talk about we need public transit, we need handy transit, and so on. And those are services that can be supplanted with private vehicles. You know, like an Uber with the right facility can get a special needs person from here to there, and more efficiently than providing a handy transit bus. So just a thought on it, that the stuff that we heard from WMR on transportation was sort of dreamy stuff, as opposed to what actually works in some other place. I mean, as I say, in North Dakota, moving people around in 10-passenger vans and in buses works very well. Yeah.
Right. So I'm hearing that like a little bit more creative thinking and a little bit more practical applications would strengthen this idea for you.
Yes, and also that the whole idea of moving away from private cars, if there was a reason to, then the small towns would probably shrivel up, because private vehicles make life in a 50-person town practical. Otherwise, it's not practical to live in a group of less than 100 people, because you can't maintain store and medical and all that stuff. So private vehicles do that job, and they can be used. As I say, they're sort of a forbidden thing to some planners, and I would hope that the practicality of rural life does not run head-on into people who don't want us ever using fossil fuel. So
Great. Thank you very much for that feedback. I think that practicality around rural communities and being the regional plan needs to be flexible to the diverse communities that exist in the region is a really good point to bring up. So thank you. Anyone else have a comment or perspective that they'd like to share on including the theme of safe, efficient, and effective transportation and what the impact of that might look like in your community?
I think I'm going to read my speech into mine.
So again, you should be able to unmute yourself at this point, and I see Pierre has found the button. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Regarding transportation, the bike racks on the buses didn't start until around May this year, and in your plan, I think it would be practical to have bike racks starting sooner in the season and lasting longer in the season as well, so that there's more of an opportunity to use them. There are some people biking, depending on the weather. There are some people using bikes more than just the summertime. Some people use them year round, and that's not that Winnipeg Transit doesn't seem to consider that fact.
Absolutely fair. The plan is still going to have to respect local decision making on some of those issues, but do you see a way to kind of talk about how that idea would make sense as a regional priority?
Yeah, well, regionally, the transit system that's developed regionally should include an option for including the bike racks on those transportation plans.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I catch it in your own words and don't put words in your mouth about those kinds of issues. Anna.
Yeah, so there's this, over in Ontario, there's this Alto thing, this speed train they're trying to throw in. I think rather than making the entire country pay for that, and it's completely unnecessary, because there's not a population out that way to support it, they should take that money and actually invest it in another track so that the goods that come across between the Pacific to Winnipeg are more efficient, and the Via Rail is more efficient, because the Via Rail keeps getting delayed waiting for the other trains, the cargo trains, to go by. Anyone here taken Via? I've taken it quite a few times, and they always have to stop because there's other trains coming along the way. I think they should just add another rail and make the transportation and the goods rails much more efficient and less having to stop while each other are clearing the way so that they can continue on. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah, screw Alto. Get that. Well, why should everyone else pay for that stupid rail that doesn't even have a population to support it? They actually stopped GO and Via up in those regions and took the rails out because there's just not the population. And now they want to take all our money and spend it on that. So if you live up in friggin' the Yukon, you're still paying for something you're never going to use. Put the rail in across from the Pacific to Winnipeg. And you get that Via Rail, everything kind of stops at Winnipeg and then continues on east or goes west, depending on which way you're going. Get another rail in there and make it a lot more efficient to move people and goods across the entire country from there. Shouldn't just be a Winnipeg thing, but it's just that Via. I think Via's head office is in Winnipeg, isn't it? Anyways,
I don't know.
Yeah, I believe so. I know it's the junction where everyone gets off after their 4-day trip across or 3-day trip across, and they switch up all the, for Via, they switch up all the staff at that point. I think a lot of them live in Winnipeg. Anyways, I just wanted to point that out. Get rid of spending money on ridiculous stuff like Alto. That's the most bonehead waste of money, and it really is just so Carney can throw all his Brookfield homes along the way. Put that money over into between the Winnipeg and Vancouver line and put a rail in there. Yeah, you're welcome.
No, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that I'm capturing it, sort of bringing it back to this lens of the Winnipeg Metro region. Would it be fair to say that
is kind of part of it? It is, because the junction ends at you. Yeah, so.
And I'm just wondering if it would be fair to say that you see some potential for including safe and efficient and effective transportation in the regional plan as a way for the region to participate in that national conversation and bring some of that coordination that's good for the region and for the country.
Well, there you go. You just got it.
Okay, great. That's what I'm here to do, is just to make sure that I understand and that we capture the feedback that we need to hear to inform the next draft. If folks want to explore the impact of this policy area, you're welcome to, but I'm also just going to shift gears a little bit and ask if anybody's got any perspectives or feedback they want to share on what needs to be emphasized in this theme area, or if anything needs to be changed around how safe, efficient, and effective transportation should be positioned in an upcoming regional plan. And again, you should be able to participate just by unmuting yourself, however that works on your device, clicking the little microphone, and I'm watching to see them turn from red to gray so that I can recognize you to speak. And for folks who have access to it, you're welcome to post in the chat. If you have thoughts or questions that you'd like to share, both the chat and our verbal conversation will be captured and considered in the What We Heard report. Okay, not seeing any rush towards the microphones, so I'm going to move us to the next theme area that should be that Winnipeg Metro Region is considering for the regional plan, which is water. And I should have an easier time remembering that. Again, I just want to start with grounding this in what we've heard through engagement to date. So a really consistent thing we heard, especially from municipalities and the public, is that water and wastewater infrastructure capacity is a key consideration. System limitations are beginning to affect growth, development, and investment opportunities throughout the region. We also heard that infrastructure upgrades are being identified across the region. Aging and undersized systems require investment to meet the current and future demand of the communities they serve. Drainage and water management benefit from regional coordination. Decisions in one municipality can have implications across the watershed. So we heard that that's an important consideration. We also heard that watershed health is essential to the long-term sustainability of the water supply, and that protecting wetlands, rivers, and natural systems supports water quality and resilience. And we heard that climate-related pressures are increasing on water systems. Drought, flooding, and extreme weather are creating new challenges that the municipalities in the region need to grapple with. So, the draft actions and key outcomes for this policy area are to plan for and support investment in regional water and wastewater systems, with the key outcome identified being infrastructure planning supports current needs and future growth at a regional level. Another action is coordinate regional drainage to support growth and infrastructure decisions, with a key outcome of drainage helps manage flood risk and reduce downstream impacts. The next action is plan for a reliable long-term water supply for the region, with an outcome being that communities have dependable water supply for residents, businesses, and future generations. And the last action is provide watersheds and protect watersheds and the natural environment, with the key outcome being healthier watersheds support water quality and natural systems. So, based on what together, these areas reflect the need for a coordinated and long-term approach to water management across the region. What do you expect the impact of water, as we have described it as a theme area, would be on your community? And again, you can unmute yourself and I'll recognize you to speak, and you feel free to jump in or post in the chat. I'm going to go Anna first and then David.
What are the policies in the region for cisterns, like home cisterns? I do know down in the drier states, south of here, they do use cisterns as a way of collecting water and putting less pressure on the water table or water resources. I mean, the river just keeps rolling. Really, you could dam it. You can't really stop it. It goes away. It just keeps going. But if you have rooftop capture of water into cisterns, I mean, is that something that's considered in the future going forward, that homes could contain those, or new homes being built have cisterns that might be sort of stored underground and not above ground? I think that's what's done down in Arizona and all those places. I think it's the way that they capture their water and supplement their water, you know, with Lake Powell and Lake Mead and all that going down. I think people are looking at that more.
Great. Thank you for that. I don't have an answer to that question. I don't have the expertise to comment on it, especially with how diverse the Winnipeg Metro region is. But, you know, it's captured in our transcript, and if you want to add it into the chat just to make sure that we get that idea captured for analysis, that would be awesome. Thank you. David, go ahead.
Sure.
Sorry, the reason that your mic keeps flickering out is me. I'm not going to touch it. Please unmute.
Okay, yeah, I unmuted you. Unmuted too. Anyway, in the early days, before there was a WMR, there was a need for some of the downriver communities where they had wells and holding ponds for sewage, but wanted better. And obviously, a lot of the prairies don't have good well water. The well water is either not nice or there isn't enough of it. So that's one reason for coordinating with the city of Winnipeg. But as far as and there's a need for flood mitigation, as I said, those three issues. As far as drinking water, if Winnipeg has the capacity to do that, that is obviously the best solution. And there was a time when Winnipeg was trying to get everybody to go to low-flow toilets so we'd have enough to ship downriver to our neighbors. So that's certainly a need to coordinate potable water supply. As far as sewage treatment, that's something else that it's become more technical. 50 years ago, I was an expert in combined sewer overflow mitigation in Ontario. And that's something that I don't think applies to the other communities, because it's easy to take a 1,000-person community and to not have storm and sanitary combined. But as far as the potable water, if it can be shipped from Winnipeg, that's a good thing, if there's enough to justify the pipe. But then you get capacity limitations too, and certainly that's one of the limitations of doubling the size of a rural community, is providing the water and sewage capacity. And that's something that the simplest way is to not have them expand. That if the town doesn't have much in the way of industry versus beyond supporting its rural, its ag industries, then a well and some holding ponds are enough to handle those services. When you start expanding a town from hundreds to tens of thousands, then you need a better source of water. And if you're 80 kilometers away from the city, it may not be practical to bring it in. And then we get those problems. But certainly the cistern idea, I mean, some of us in the city use rainwater for our gardens, and that's a seasonal thing. If you're going to do it year-round, as the lady just said, you do it underground. So there are those issues. One of the issues people don't appreciate for flooding is that in the old days, like 200 years ago, if they got a bunch of water, it flooded the farmland, and people built the farmhouses on elevation so that when there was a foot of water on their land, the house was okay. When we wall up the rivers, and the Assiniboine is a great example, if you put walls down the side of it, then when something happens, you have a huge torrent of water, hitting Brandon, etc. And a century before, that would have just flooded Saskatchewan fields. So there are the issues of tiling fields too. We tile fields because the field is more productive. We don't lose crops if you drain it with tiles. And once you've tiled the field and put in a 10-foot deep ditch from your field, your rainstorm gets to the Red or Assiniboine way faster than it did a century before. And so that's the big reason that we have more flooding problems is we channelize the water and we drain our fields. And those are just the modern way of life, but it's hard to mitigate. But those are some of the facts that people don't tell you about water. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have thoughts about the expected impact of this policy area as described in your community? Or if you want to jump ahead, we can absolutely do that and talk as well about anything that needs to be emphasized or changed. Just going to hold space for a second to see if anybody is trying to reach the mic or needs a second to think about their thoughts. These are fine. Go ahead, David.
I guess looking at your slides, and I can't read them, they're too small to read some of the print, but is the intention of the CPR to coordinate the supply of drinking water through the whole region? And is it currently practical to send a pipe from Winnipeg to some of the towns outside, like Morris and Niverville? Will city water go that far, and is there enough? And will sewage, because sewage can't run downhill that far, will it be trucked to Winnipeg, or will it have more primitive treatment and then be dumped into a waterway? Is that, because I would expect that if WMR is planning these utility services for the whole region, you have to think about what Winkler or whatever is going to do, LaSalle's going to do with its sewage. As I say, it's hard enough getting it to run downhill across a place the size of Winnipeg. And once you go 30 or 50 kilometers away, it no longer can be, the running downhill and pumping it becomes impractical. Is that the plan for, if you're going to triple the residential capacity of all our little rural towns, because we need somewhere to put these people, is that going to be an issue you handle with truck sewage? And is that in the plan?
Friends of mine that moved to
So yeah, I'm not an expert on the detailed technical nuances of the plan. I think that's a great question to post in chat though, so that we can make sure that it's captured. And I guess my question back to you again. So we're looking a little bit at coordinate regional supports on drainage, support growth, and infrastructure decisions. Is the piece we're talking about here, with drainage helping manage flood risk, reduce downstream impacts, and a little bit on the infrastructure planning supports for current needs and future growth. So I guess, what do you think would be the best way to reflect that in the regional plan so that it captures that technical nuance and the practical realities of how water works, if I can put it that way? Do you have any thoughts on that, David? And if not, that's fine. I don't want to put anyone on the spot.
Sorry, my wife is listening to her own Zoom, and it was quite distracting. And if we'd been on the same group, but we can't. So I missed your question.
Sorry, I apologize for the technical difficulties. We would normally do these in one meeting with breakout rooms, but Zoom just couldn't guarantee that we could do that reliably today.
Yeah.
Which is fun. So my question is just, how would you like to see that technical piece that you just outlined reflected in the regional plan, so that it speaks to the practical realities of water and provides the best framework for regional coordination?
I guess someone would have to decide whether significantly increasing the population of small towns, small villages in southern Manitoba, if that's an essential thing, and we're going to keep the rivers clean, then you have to be able to provide 10 tasty water and effective sewage treatment to all those places. And I would suggest that it probably can't be done locally. By the time you do all that flocculation and treatment of more than happens in a pond, and by the time you take well water and purify it, reverse osmosis and so on, you've increased the cost of being in that town. And the large concentration, just like people are talking about having everybody live in the city, certainly the city can provide those services much more efficiently, and the effluent water from the sewage plant can be very clean, and the drinking water can be very clean, more than you can do in some rural places. Like even Grand Forks has a problem providing enough drinking water for its people. It's got a river, but it never uses it. They pump out of wells, and the well capacity isn't there, and it may never come back. So I would think there's a reason, a great purpose in CPR laying out plans for how we're going to quadruple the population of southern Manitoba unless we put everybody in the city. Because the small towns worked where they don't have that much of an effect on the river if there's hardly any people. You start putting 500,000 people in rural southern Manitoba, and you're going to ruin the rivers or increase the cost of providing water and sewage. So that's a good reason for the CPR to exist. And I think before it plans exactly what it's going to do, it would look at can we handle that many people and that much sewage by conventional means. And that's something I think it would be a very valid exercise for the CPR to say, how can we do this? And if there's no good way of doing it, then the idea of having a Niverville public transit really doesn't help much, because maybe you can't support 200,000 people in Niverville. Maybe that's just not practical. But somebody hasn't made, I certainly haven't, and I doubt anybody else has made the determination of how would we do that? How would we support all those people in these various small municipalities? And if we can't do it, then talking about whether they get apartment buildings, whether they get a public transit or handy transit is moot, because it just can't happen.
Okay.
That's a thought that, maybe it's certainly valid, and I think it'd be nice to have that answered. And I think it's way more important than the handy transit. Thanks.
Thanks for that clarification. I appreciate it. Does anyone else want to share their thoughts on water as a key theme in forming the public draft of the regional plan?
Hi.
Go ahead, Pierre.
Yes, regarding water, my comment is that in the regional plan, well water, existing wells should be maintained and allowed.
Okay, make sure that the regional plan doesn't allows for local wells?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Just to make sure that we have context when we're doing analysis, could you tell me a little bit about why that's important to you?
Well, because access to water is a fundamental human right, and it shouldn't be restricted by any law, policy, or regional plan.
Great, thank you. Okay, team, if we're satisfied with providing input on water, I'll take us to our next theme, which is, do I see a hand up there, David?
Yeah, just to point out that the last speaker spoke about continuing the use of wells. As I recall it, the WMR, as of a couple of years ago, included the WMR having control over whether private wells would continue. And if the well was not seen as in the public interest, even if it's private. So if you got a group of 1 or 10 houses and they're depending on a well, they want to keep that going. But the early WMR said, no, we might stop that. So that's why it becomes a relevant question and a valid one by that last speaker.
Thank you for that context and feedback. Yeah, this regional plan is reset from previous documents, so we're starting grounded on what we heard over the last year and what we're hearing tonight. So appreciate people putting that idea on the radar and making sure that we recognize how important it is going forward. Anna, go ahead.
What is the policies, or what are the strategies about reducing the amount of effluent or things that are going into effluent that needs to be filtered and so on? Are there any initiatives to try and reduce what goes into the toilets and out? Like, you know, I mean, for fear of sounding silly, but I'm going to do it anyways. You know, like, should people maybe consider less toilet paper and more bideting? Should people consider not letting tampons go down the toilet? Like, things like that. Ways of trying to manage the amount of effluent and its contents going out. I mean, we know that we have biological needs, but do we need to use certain, you know, are there certain shampoos and things like that? Because, you know, people rely on the water downstream, and it's a big city, and there's a lot of effluent, and so just wondering, you know, can we find ways going forward in reducing the amount of chemicals and matter that are going into the sewage system?
Great. Yeah, you've got great questions for me tonight, Anna, but I don't have the expertise on what's actually in play in the region right now, and I don't want to misinform you. But it sounds to me like that is something important, like you'd like to see the WMR consider as part of the approach to managing those downstream impacts, is, you know, having that explicit focus on effluent. So we can take that feedback for sure. David, is that hand up again?
Yeah, I dropped it just so it would look new. That's one issue for the city, because the city's in a position where it produces an awful lot of effluent and has an awful lot of shampoo in the water, but it has the technology to remove some of those things. When this became an issue 50 years ago, one solution was to change the formulation for shampoos and laundry soap in cities, depending on what they did with their sewage. That you could have just about anything if you dumped it into the ocean, but if it was going into a river that somebody else was going to drink out of, then it limited what things you could have in your laundry soap. So that's one issue, and that's for cities. Now, for things that aren't cities, like our small RMs, that becomes a bigger issue, because the water may sit in the lagoon, it may sit in the septic tank, but then how it's eventually treated to make sure that the shampoo, we'll call it, doesn't get into somebody else's drinking water. So there are issues there, and that's why I said back, the last comment was that if the WMR is going to be setting up rules for these places to grow, that's something that they have to have somebody say it can be done. That certainly that last caller raises really good points about all the stuff that comes out of our houses. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
I just wanted to add to that. Thank you, David, for that comment. I wanted to add the fact that I do live with a septic onto my home, and I mean, this might be too personal, but I don't use toilet paper. I just bidet, because toilet paper is just one more bit of effluent that needs to be filtered out, and there's toxins involved in creating that material, and that goes into the water supply, and if that gets somehow down the stream to other people's drinking water in towns down the way, it is a problem. So we may want to change our hygiene habits, but we also may want to change the chemicals that we do use in household stuff. Do we need to use such caustic chemicals to clean our toilets and all that? I know it's all potty talk, sorry. But it's important. It's important. It's important to the fish, and it's important to the people drinking the water downstream. And it's a big city, so a lot's coming out. So yeah, thank you.
Great. So I'm hearing that there's a pretty clear need for the perspective being shared is that there's a pretty clear need for the region to have some conversations about effluent and downstream impacts.
Especially if you're talking about growth. If you're planning on population growth, it's all that more important. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification, especially if there's growth.
Yeah.
David?
Well, I guess the other aspect of that is we've got some new neighbors. Recent arrival, well, not recent arrivals in Canada in the last few years, and they still can't get the blue box thing right. We end up having to take them out to the curb because they can't remember when Wednesday is. And so there's a lot of education that isn't happening. And I can imagine that if we have 100,000 people who in Winnipeg who have recently arrived and half of them can't get it right either, that's an issue. What the lady said about the toilet paper and all that stuff, you sort of have to legislate it in what's available to people. And even then expect that 10 or 20% of us are going to get it wrong. So that's not a WMR thing. That's a city thing and a provincial thing. But it does point out that if Winnipeg is going to grow by 40% in the next 20 years, and if other little towns are, we have to be prepared to do that stuff. And once again, it'd be nice if the WMR had plans. And if they realize, talking to experts, that you can't clean up the water from another 200,000 people outside the city, then there's a good reason to not drastically increase the population there. So again, the same theme, but the toilet paper is certainly one of the many.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. I think since we're talking quite a bit about issues that are, growth and things that are a little bit related to our next theme, I'm going to move us on to our fourth and final theme for the evening, which is resilient and healthy communities. So again, this is getting familiar at this point, but I want to start by grounding it in what we've heard to date through engagement. The first, a consistent theme, and one we're hearing on the call tonight, is that housing affordability and supply and well, actually, that's not quite fair. The population growth is what we're hearing on the call, but housing affordability and supply are emerging considerations, and rising costs and supply challenges are affecting both urban and rural communities, though I'm sure in diverse ways. Opportunities to expand housing options across the region are something that we heard a lot of feedback about, and that the current housing mix can affect choice and affordability. And yeah, as we're hearing on the call tonight, and as we heard in the feedback to date, population growth is increasing demand in communities, and that drives a demand for housing, infrastructure, and services, and creates pressures along the lines that we've been discussing tonight. We also heard that access to services and amenities varies across the region, and that there's a growing interest in improving access to services, green spaces, and community infrastructure where it makes sense for local priorities. And then we also heard that extreme weather and emergency-related pressures are increasing, including flooding, drought, and extreme weather, which are creating new challenges for communities. So, based on what we heard and where the region is headed, the actions and key outcomes that are currently in the draft set of themes are action 1 is to support a range of housing options to meet local needs, with the key outcome being communities have more flexibility to plan and deliver housing that meets community needs. The second action is improve access to services and amenities through better planning and coordination, with an outcome being residents can more easily reach everyday services, amenities, and community facilities.
And the last key action under this area is reduce risk and improve readiness for future challenges, with the key outcome being communities are better prepared to manage flooding, infrastructure pressures, and emergencies.
Together, these areas reflect the importance of supporting communities that are livable, connected, and resilient while allowing flexibility for local priorities and decision making. So based on how resilient and healthy communities is described in what we just went over, and looking at the key actions and key outcomes, what do you think the impact of resilient and healthy communities, as we've described it here, would be on your community, good or bad? And again, if you want to post in chat or unmute your microphone, I'll call on you just to make sure that we're not talking over each other. But if anyone wants to jump in, please feel free. Anna.
Hi, again. We don't need any more monster homes. We need affordable housing. And I think expanding upward rather than sprawling outward might be the best way to deal with a population that is increasing. Again, on land that is sort of derelict, you know, businesses that have closed and are sitting there derelict and, you know, with crumbling pavement and so on, you know, forced to sell or forced to develop one way or another. But if you want to beautify a city while providing housing, I think that's the way to go. I don't think we need 5-bedroom homes for, you know, a 3-person family or 4-person family, let's say. We don't need that anymore. I think that's a waste of space. It's expensive, and it's not fair to people that are looking for housing that can't afford a house like that. So, I mean, if you're trying to dissuade people from coming to that region, that's a great way to do it. But if you are going to be bringing people, you want to have affordable housing. And again, you don't want that sprawl, because it just like encroaches all the natural areas and the agriculture areas. I think, are the agricultural areas protected? Are there agricultural zones that are not allowed to be developed in that way? Because I'd hate to see the city limits just sprawl out and expand.
So that one I know that I don't know well enough to answer a question, because those kinds of zoning decisions can be very complex, and I don't want to misinform you. But we did have the first theme that we talked about this evening, which I'm just going to see if I can find quickly, around a growing and innovative economy. We did hear that protecting agricultural land and key resources is foundational, and that growth needs to be balanced with safeguarding long-term economic assets like farmland, green space, and mineral resources. So one of the key actions and outcomes from under the growing and innovative economy idea is preserve farm and resource lands while supporting growth. So thank you for hitting on that and connecting it to how sometimes these ideas overlap and maybe can be organized in different ways. I appreciate that. David, go ahead.
Okay, here we go. That's something that may go beyond the scope of CPR, in that the province would be in a good position to say that we have different grades of agricultural land in Manitoba, and if your land is this or this grade, you can't put residential lots on it, even if they only chew off 5% a year, if you want to preserve that land. Unfortunately, the highest pressure to build accommodation, to build residential, is in our most productive land, which would be Niagara and Toronto and southern BC, southern mainland, like Vancouver. And certainly if Vancouver is going to pave every bit of Chilliwack, then that's going to harm Canada's ag capacity. If Regina triples in size, it will have less of an impact, but that's a thing that the province could easily do if it wanted. And I would think that's beyond WMR, because whether we lose 100 acres of farmland between Winnipeg and Niverville, or we lose it south of Brandon, it's still lost farmland. So it's a noble thing. But as far as in the city, I think we have builders who, with HAF, have been pressured into multifamily, and I think it looks like there's a good supply of newish multifamily and some single family. But outside, I think the early WMR purpose seemed to be to increase density in all the RMs, making sure that if they doubled in population, they wouldn't chew up a lot of farmland. So I think that was one of the early WMR goals. Mr. Dick says it's not right now, apparently, but it still has to be a concern that we not expand all our little towns because once you've put 100 houses on land, it's never going to be a farm again. So it's a good point.
Okay, thanks. So your feedback is that the regional plan should continue to emphasize that protection of agricultural land?
Yes, protection of agricultural land more than density, because you can say that density means you can double the population and not increase your footprint, but just saying no more footprint for all these little towns is something the province could do if it wanted. Might get a bit of feedback, but that would serve the purpose more precisely. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anyone else want to talk about what the impact of resilient and healthy communities as described and up on the screen right now would be in your community? Go ahead, Pierre.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that there is a limit to the capacity of a region for a population, and we can't expect to just keep cramming more and more people into a dense environment. I don't think anybody would be comfortable in a dense environment, and housing is not a right. And there's only so much space for families and people. But my comment is that housing is not a right, and the space is limited. And high density is not comfortable. It leads to all sorts of problems when it comes to water supplies, garbage, sewer, things like that. Crime is another factor that needs to be considered. So we have to know when to say no, and we can't just say that the regional plan is unlimited, and we just have to keep densifying. No.
Okay. Does the key outcome that I read out about communities having more flexibility to plan and deliver housing that meets community needs, does that speak to that concern for you, or are there changes you'd like to see?
Well, they need to develop limits and realize that there are limits and accept and make determinations as to how much sprawl is acceptable. Like the previous speaker spoke about farmland. Farmland is important, and it needs to be determined, how much we're willing to give up and how much we're not willing to give up, and what our limit is. I think we need to talk about limits on the amount of immigration that's coming in. The limits need to be respected.
Okay, so talk about that it might be. It's important to talk about limits on growth.
Yeah, limits on growth. Exactly.
Great, thank you for helping me make sure I understood.
And limits on immigration.
Okay, got that. Thank you. Anyone else?
I was just going to say I agree with you, Pierre. I think that we have to think about crime. Crime is a big one, and assimilation. And if there's a population that's coming in that's not assimilating and crime goes up because of it, then that needs to be limited, right? We have to have people who will assimilate in the prevailing culture of the region. Sorry to say it that way, but it's if you want a lesson from Europe, have a look over there. It's a big problem. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. I also just want to make sure folks know that I am watching chat and I see that there's a discussion happening about this issue. But if anybody wants to jump in on audio, you're welcome to. But posting in chat is perfectly acceptable, and those comments will be captured for analysis in the What We Heard report and in the inform the development of the public draft of the regional plan. We're talking about this already, but I also just want to, I'm sorry, if you want to unmute again, you can just click the microphone on your interface and I will see it turn on my end and I'll say your name and let you speak. So please feel free, or feel free to keep posting in chat. We're talking about this already, but I do want to just make sure the question gets asked. Are there impacts that, or are there pieces that you want to see emphasized or changed in the regional plan framework as it's described here? Go ahead, David.
So you're looking for additional areas of concern or activity, if I understood that. Instead of providing half the streets have a bus running on them in a small town, coordinating commuting into the city is something that has potential to reduce fuel use. Catching whereas North Dakota uses company buses, but if you had a provincially operated system where a 12-passenger vehicle would depart from Gimli or Morris or whatever into a location, to a bus stop in Winnipeg, it would make practical somebody living there. But the better solution would be to have them live in Winnipeg rather than move to Morris and then commute in. Because there's the transportation cost, the danger in the winter, and then the cost of providing all the utilities for them in the RM. So just a thought that an option other than city bus in these outlying areas would be a semi-public way of commuting.
Okay, so some ideas around creative ways to approach residents being able to more easily reach services, amenities, facilities, and where they need to be to work and live their lives.
Right, because if you live in one of the smaller communities in Manitoba, there is a gas station, there's a hardware store, and a grocery store and a library, and basically that's what people need. If they don't need a medical or whatever. They've got everything they need within 5 blocks of their home. So small towns work that way. Allen, Saskatchewan, and some of the others in Manitoba. But if people want to commute to their jobs in a bigger center, as I said with the hog plant south of Brandon, having public transit from the plant into town would have helped those workers. But instead, the workers all had cars. So those are options that, as I say, the whole idea of living in the country is so you can have a bigger yard. And if that means driving into town, that's a huge cost. So, those are options to think about. And hopefully the new plan will have a page dealing with that.
Okay. Do you feel like how we've kind of been talking about the plan tonight has space for those ideas and needs to hit it harder? Or is that, do you think that there's something something at that sort of high level action needs to be added to make sure that gets captured?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the slides really dealt with that issue, like the range of housing options and the creative communities and innovation are, I guess, popular words. They're buzzwords and don't necessarily capture, as you put it, the reality of having a job out of town and how do you get there? Because we've always had the idea that somebody gets to their job by jumping in their 20-mile-per-gallon pickup truck and going to work. And, that one person in a truck doing that uses quite a bit of fuel in a year. The teacher that lives in Gimli because it's cool and teaches in Winnipeg, that's a popular way of life. And again, this does not, this plan and its slides really don't mention that demographic, the highway travelers.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's the clarification I was hoping to get.
Yeah.
If anyone else wants to jump in on healthy and resilient communities, please feel free. And again, just because the tech can be a little tricky and sometimes folks need to gather their thoughts, I'm going to hold space for a few seconds, but if nobody wants to jump in, we'll move on. Okay, thank you. I'm going to take the slides down. Thank you for that. The visual aid just tends to help, but those are the 4 themes that we wanted to get your input on today. So just to recap them, a growing and innovative economy, safe, efficient, and effective transportation, water, and healthy and resilient communities. Before we close, though, I want to just open the floor for a few minutes to see if anyone has any other questions or comments about regional planning, about this process, anything that you want to share that we can bring back to the WMR team for comment or include in the What We Heard report. Go ahead, David.
I guess the things that didn't appear in your slide, as far as planning, what is the plan for population? Like, is it going to be, all the RMs are going to triple in size in 50 years? Is the city going to grow to 2 million? These are things that are not in the plan. And if you're planning long term, how many people are we talking about? It's one thing to say, what they're going to live in and how they're going to get around, but how many people are we planning for? Because that's something that everything else depends on. So how big a population and where is it going to be? As I say, if you start taking into account things like sewage and clean water, you may find that the increase is going to be 95% near the city. And, the Morris maybe has enough people to do the job of supporting that ag community on its own. So you may not need to increase the population of Winkler and so on very significantly, especially if you do it right, if you clean the water that comes out of those houses. So those are things that the long-range planning is how many people and where are they going to, what part of the region are they going to live in?
Thank you. That's a great question that we can take back to the WMR folks.
Yeah.
In planning, actually, this is probably more of a business model, but still, beautifying the downtown, beautifying the region. Can we have less corporate stuff all over the place and actually have more mom and pop type stuff? I mean, I'm tired of seeing golden arches and big burger signs and flashing lights and stuff. It just looks so junky, if you don't mind me saying. Having I don't know. I just think that I think we need to go back to less corporate garbage in the region and more mom and pop stuff, and employing local kids, local high school kids at a coffee shop or a retired person or something like that. We don't need to have driving down the highway and just seeing ugly signs all over the place, and it just looks like a dog's breakfast. You got a Pizza Hut over here, McDonald's across the street, and it's just signs everywhere, and it's ugly as all get out. So can we beautify things and get rid of all of that? We're not too happy anyways about the quality of food coming out of those places. I really think we should go back to mom and pop. That's all. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me, but I feel strongly about that.
I would agree. I think these most small towns, most RMs never had name brand stuff. You know, they might have a name brand gas station, but everything else was mom and pop. I mean, I had lunch today at the Grove in Winnipeg, which is not a chain restaurant. And so in the city, in regions of the city, there's still room for small operations, for small places, small businesses. But unfortunately, if you're talking people, dragging people off the highway, you know, putting up something along Highway 1, it sort of has to have that big sign or people won't stop. But in the small towns like rural, they don't need to have that. And I would support that idea. And obviously, if somebody's offering that, hopefully they're staying in business.
Great. Thank you both for that input. Angela, go ahead.
Thank you, Amanda, for your presentation. I was under the impression that this open house was for us to learn about the proposed draft regional plan. And it feels like it was just more questions asked to us and we weren't told what the changes were. We've directed our community members to come to this, and sadly there's not a lot of people here. And I just feel like the changes that were supposed to be told to us of the changes of what was that everyone was so upset with to what it is now, we haven't given that information to our communities.
Okay. You know, we tried to provide some of that in the video message, which will be posted online afterwards. And then the key actions, or the actions and key outcomes that we talked about, are the big picture themes that are going to be in the next public draft of the regional plan. If there are specific things that specific topics where you're really want to understand in detail, if it's in or out compared to previous iterations, I think, you know, please free to ask those questions and we can take them back to WMR or send them an email at the email I've just posted in the chat. The next steps for the process. So, you know, right now, tonight's open house was really supposed to be focused on collecting public input on those themes. So I hope that
then that's my apology, Amanda, because I was told by my CAO that it was to learn about the proposed draft regional plan for the capital region and basically ask questions on that. So that's my concern, and I don't think we've given that to our community. I'm a counselor for the RM of Rosser, and that's, I guess, why I'm not on the board, but I'm here to speak to, we were directing people here to get the information so they would know what the draft plan was. And I don't think we've shared that. And that's just my personal opinion, not my council's opinion. I just don't think, like, the veto, a lot of the concerns was the veto vote that the city of Winnipeg had. You know, when is their veto vote? They still have a veto vote. When is that veto vote? Like things like that, that their community is very concerned about. And I don't think that we gave that to them in this open house. So that's just my opinion. And I truly appreciate, though, your discussion today.
Thank you for sharing that opinion. We'll be sure to take that back. I can't speak to the great complexity of some of those issues that you raised, but I do think the video will help a little bit with that. I admit I was frantically trying to solve some IT issues on the back end, so I'm not entirely sure I can repeat exactly what the chair of WMR said in his message, but he did address the veto piece. At least we did have a little bit of information about that, but I hear you, and we'll take those comments back to WMR. Thank you. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. Will like a PDF copy of the presentation be available after this meeting?
That is a good question. I'm not sure. I will ask and get some clarification on that. I know we're posting the video from the beginning and intend to post follow-up resources. Something will be posted. I'm not 100% sure that I can guarantee exactly what format that will take.
Sure, and where would that be posted? I'm guessing on.
It'll be posted on the WMR website.
Okay. Okay.
Stephanie, go ahead. Stephanie, I see you're unmuted. I hope you can hear me and feel free to jump in. If you're speaking, Stephanie, we can't hear you, unfortunately.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My statement / question is related to Sean and Angela. I did think that this was going to be more of an informational open house and we would have just more things told to us about what this plan is and what the changes are. But I still was able to get some information from the discussion, which is great. So I have the same question if this is going to be available to us, if the draft is going to be available to us and where we can find it. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, so I know we're posting the video that was presented at the front end that provides that high-level overview and answers some questions. Folks are welcome to email WMR if after reviewing those videos again they don't have those questions. A public draft of the regional plan is being developed right now and is going to be informed by feedback we're collecting, including the conversations we had tonight. A public draft of the regional plan will be available later this year. I don't have a timeline with, unfortunately, but it will be available, and it will be going to statutory public hearing later in the year as well. So the draft will be available before that hearing, and the public will have an opportunity to comment and present if they desire.
Okay, and then just to further this a little bit more, I'll try not to take up too much time. I am also viewing on the browser, and I didn't realize that there were visuals, so I didn't get to see any of those slides either. So I just want to know if those are going to be available and where I can find those.
Right, that I'm going to have to. We intend to publish follow-up resources. I don't know what format they take, and we're going to have to talk to WMR about the technical issue we encountered tonight with some folks on the browser not being able to see them. But we'll make sure that information gets posted on the WMR website.
Okie dokie. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope you feel better.
Thanks.
Okay, great. That brings us to the end of the discussion that we were going to have tonight. I want to finish by really sincerely thanking you all for coming tonight and for your patience while we worked through those technical issues. Those are never fun for anyone, and I really appreciate everyone being so kind about that. I want to thank everyone for their time today and for all the perspectives and questions that you shared. It really was helpful, and I appreciated being able to engage in that conversation. We have your email addresses, and we'll send updates on the next phases of the process and the progress of what we heard reporting and the drafting of the report as that information becomes available. But otherwise, I just want to say thank you, and this is the end of our conversation. So, feel free to leave the meeting and have a lovely and pleasant evening.
Thanks very much. It was fun. I hope we helped you.
I always find these helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.